All right, we're back. We are COMP1073 in the winter 2017 semester, client-side scripting at Georgian, week 9, part 2 of our broadcast. We just finished talking about some complex stuff, which we talked about how to declare classes both ways, the old way and the new way, right? So let's go back to the code for a second. And this is the new way, and we split it across a different file. And we were hoping, really hoping, that we could actually solve this problem of having multiple files using the new way of declaring classes and using closures, right? But unfortunately, she doesn't work this way. And I say it in a very, very, in a way to be funny, but really it doesn't just work. In fact, if you look at caniuse.com for compatibility, the ES6 module declaration syntax is incompatible. It's just not going to happen, right? And notice that every single browser is red on import and export. It's red because the problem is not everyone agrees, right? In order for things to be adopted, right, or kind of used in different browsers, all the browser makers have to get together and say, yep, I agree, let's use it. And then the next iteration of their browser incorporates it. That's number one. Second thing is they have to figure out how to do it, right? One is to do it. The other one is to actually physically change their browser to make it work, right? And they haven't agreed, or they haven't done it yet. One of the two. Maybe it's on the docket, maybe it's not, but it's not coming anytime soon. We have one version of Safari that claims to have access to it. My version that's on my Mac doesn't have it. Maybe yours might support it, but at the end of the day, 0.01% of the global population of browsers has access to it. That's like no one has access to it. If no one has access to it, we can't use export and import. That new standard does not exist for us as far as we're concerned. So how do we get around it? We use TypeScript. TypeScript, if you look at the documentation, that we've been talking about it all the time, right? We have to do a couple things. One, in order for us to get going with TypeScript, to use this cross-compatible version of a superset of JavaScript is what I want to define it as well. I want to install it with Node. Now we've done Bower, right? We installed Bower with Node, and I got you to install Node. This is the reason for the very first day we got together that I got you to install Node and all that kind of stuff because of TypeScript, because I knew we were going to need it. And this is the best way to install it. So whenever I install TypeScript, -G stands for global, right? I need to do this. So on the command line, I'm just going to go back to the command line. Let's do this together because it's a new thing we need to do, right? I'm going to have this new installation. If I do the global command prompt, right, globally, it's going to install it in my machine so that any project can use TypeScript, okay? Now, let me do it with you. So on a PC or Mac, do the following. npm install -G for global, and then spell out TypeScript, okay? That's the first step. And if I press enter, it's going to go out to TypeScript, grab the latest version, and install it. And notice that my version says 2.2.1. Okay, your version should now say the same thing. Yes? Anyone have any issues getting this? If you have, and if you can't, if it says npm is not a recognized command, that means you're going back to day one. You have to fix your computer to make sure that you can use npm on the console. Okay? If you're a Mac person, you shouldn't have a problem. Okay, if you've installed Node. Notice like my version of Node right now, Node -v is 7.5. Again, we're at 7.71 right now, something like that. Remember, we installed Node.js right from the first day. So if I go to nodejs.org, you can see that the latest version is 7.7.3. Did I say 7.7.1? That was only 2 days ago. 7.7.3 is the latest features, right? 6.10 is the long-term version, the long-term stability version or stable version. Right, so this one here is okay. The LTS version is okay to use. And again, just to look at the LTS schedule for Node and how it's going to move, you can see what they're planning, right? So here's Node version 6. This is the backend stuff we've been using. The long-term schedule, long-term release schedule for long-term support, right? It's going to be up until and including April 2018, right? So it's going to last that way. This is the active LTS. Then it's going to maintenance mode. Node 7 is the current version. It's current until April 2017, where it becomes the current version after October 2016. It's supposed to be, right? They're a little bit behind here. It kind of becomes current as soon as April 2017 hits, this next month coming up, right? And then it goes into active status. It becomes active as of April, right? And it stays active until probably somewhere into the 2019 area, or maybe even 2020, right? And then sometime in October of 2017, version 8 will become active, and version 7 will become, that's what they're planning anyway. Version 7 is something that they're going to use as, it's going to stay pretty much the current version for a long time. Now notice that it also cuts off here. That's just like version 5. It went right to version 6 and so on. It looks like they're skipping version 7 and going right to version 8, starting off in October of 2017. So that means that if I go back to this is just from a versioning perspective for Node, the back end that we've been using so far. That means this is going to quickly run into version 8 pretty soon, right? What does this mean for you? Pretty much nothing, right? It means that when you use new modules, if you ever leave this course and go to another course, by the time you get to that course, by the time you do server-side scripting, for most of you, you'll see version 8 on the right side, right? That's all it means. And that's how fast the web moves, right? Okay, good. Now that we've got TypeScript installed, right, and we've got this, we can't just use TypeScript from the get-go. We have to install it properly inside of our code, right? So one of the things we need to use TypeScript in our code is something called a tsconfig.json file. So let's do that. So let's write to kind of make a new file inside the main root folder, right? So new file, we're going to call it tsconfig.json. tsconfig.json. tsconfig.json, right, is going to be a configuration file for how TypeScript is resolved, how we compile from TypeScript, or transpile is what it's called, from TypeScript to pure JavaScript, ECMAScript 5, the old standard. So it's compatible 100% of browsers, right? Or more like 100%. We're going to put some curly braces in place, right? And we're going to use, if you're using Visual Studio Code, I want you to press Control Space, and you should see something like this come up. Okay, do you guys all see that? What we're really trying to do is talk about the compiler options for TypeScript, okay? If I scroll down to compiler options and press Enter, please press Enter here, I'm going to see this structure, right? And I want to talk about two ways. One, what kind of module system do I want to use, right? So I want to type the keyword module. And as I start typing and press Enter, you can see that the module gets entered in as CommonJS, right? That's cool. I like that. What else? What else can I put in here? I also want to talk about something else, right? So module is one thing. The other thing is target. I need to tell TypeScript how to compile. What's my target? It's not ECMAScript 3. That's way back in the day, right? It's got to be ECMAScript 5. That's important. ECMAScript 5 is one we want to use here, right? Okay, cool. So compiler options, ECMAScript 5, target. The other thing I want you to put in there is something called source maps, or source map. My source map is going to be true. What source map does is it generates a map, right? A map file to help me do some code hinting. Notice that I'm getting a bit of an error, right, in my tsconfig.json file. If I hover over, it says no inputs are found in config file, la la la. Don't worry about that. Just save. Right? So my tsconfig.json file looks like this. Are you guys all with me? I can't do any kind of transpiling from TypeScript to JavaScript unless I have this. Next, what I want to do is in my scripts file, right? I want to change my cars and trucks.js. I want to rename it to carsandtrucks.ts. So rename this file. TS, right? And I also want to do the same thing for my app.js. Rename my app.js from app.js to app.ts. Okay, let's leave my playground out of it for now. Okay, once I've changed it to cars and trucks, now we're getting something different here. In my cars and trucks, I'm getting these little underlines, right? In fact, it says property wheels does not exist in type vehicle. Remember what I talked about TypeScript is two things. TypeScript makes JavaScript easier, right? TypeScript, what it does is it also gives us some good support, code hinting. It tells you, hey, something's wrong here. Did you forget to do something? Because I haven't defined wheels and doors inside my class structure. It doesn't know what these are, right? So I must define them now. And inside my class, I need to say something like this. I need to say wheels, right? And I need to kind of define the type of wheels. Wheels should be what? Like a number, right? That's the type. And I can start typing that in, number. And same thing with doors, which is also a number. These are my properties, or my instance variables, right? And this is my constructor. So I'm just annotating here for you. There you go. And also down in here where I have car, this also doesn't make any sense for TypeScript. TypeScript says, hey, you've never defined make and model. Let's define it now. So inside here, we're going to say, make is a string, and model is also a string. Okay, this is a constructor. And this up here are my instance variables. And this method here is a method, right? So I'm going to kind of go in here and go method. Here's all my methods, right? I can have more than one. And here's my, down here, there's another method down here, methods. I can have more than one of those. Okay, cool. So I've fixed up this thing, and I'm going to save my file, right? But it's still TS. Going back, review. Do browsers understand the TS extension? In a browser, any browser, do they understand the TS extension? The answer is no. They don't understand the TS extension. They don't know what to do with TS files, right? We need to transpile. We need to change this from TypeScript and compile it somehow to JavaScript. Now I can go into the JavaScript, the TypeScript website, copy and paste in here, and make it perfect JavaScript if I want to. But that's not the exercise here. Okay? So this is part one. Part two. So one is we do this. And the other thing I want to do, remember what I did before when I surrounded this with some kind of module? I want to do that here too. So on the outside of this, I want to say something like this. I want to say module, right? Or namespace. You can use one or the other. We're going to call this cars and trucks. And I'll make it capital cars and trucks. Cars and trucks. And I want to kind of make a space in here and take all this stuff here, cut it, and put it inside here, paste it inside there, inside the module. Okay, so now you have everything that I had before, just that there's a module, an external module. And if I want to sort it out, I can kind of select all. So Control or Command A, right click, and go to Format Document. And it'll format it really nicely, so it looks nice. All right, so now we have our TypeScript file. That's what we have here, right? Which is cars and trucks. It's been connected to my index.html, right? And my contact.html and my projects.html by putting it in line. You have to do this. You must do this, or else it cannot be connected. So you need to kind of list it here as a module, right? So here's my cars and trucks. And now I need to import this into my app.ts. It used to be app.js. And I don't use this syntax. Okay? I don't use this syntax for that. Not necessarily. Okay? I can if I want. I can say import car from, right? And again, if you notice what my import statement is, here's my import. Car from, or if I go star, how about star? Import star from, and if I open up a quotation and I go to /, right, cars and trucks, right, .ts. There's a problem with this, and if I hover over it, it says from expected. So here's from, right? And then, so import star from this as something else. And if you want to look at the syntax for this, when we do importing and exporting of files, if I go to my handbook, And if I look at modules, it's going to show you examples on how to do this. All the code that you need is right up on here. So if we ever do the exam and I will ask you to do something in TypeScript, it's right up here on the TypeScriptLang.org site, which you will have access to. So here I'm exporting stuff, and now I need to import stuff. Right? Well, here it is. I can go import, and notice I'm using these curly braces, right? Import these curly braces from, and then blah, 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 right? So import, notice I'm using import star. I'm exporting star. That means I'm exporting everything, right? Here I'm importing it as whatever I want. And notice I can use the as keyword. Import zip code validator as ZCV, right? And then I could, establish each of these things if I wanted to, right? So what I really want to do is I want to say something like this. I don't want to do this. I want to do this. I want to say import in curly braces car, right? As car, right? From this area. Now, if you look at this import, it says import declaration can only be used in a namespace or module, right? So I'm not in a namespace or module, so I can't do it this way, but it does work, right? I can do this. If I was in an import or module, I can import, right? What's the other way to do it, right? If I want to get it in, I want to kind of get my module in here, and I'm following this syntax, right? Well, I don't have to even go this way. I don't have to even go this far. All I have to do is do something like this. So I know that it's part of my class. I know I've already done it. I've already connected. But I want to make a reference to my module, right? And I can do // reference path equals to, I'm just going to show you the syntax for a second, right? And then / cars and trucks .ts, and then close bracket. Notice that doesn't give me an error. Reference path. What this does is it says, hey, include everything that I have in my reference from my cars and trucks module, include it right here on line 7. Okay, that's what it's doing. Now, if I go down here, right, where I go down to that place where I have my car declaration, see how it says, I don't understand what that is, right? Well, my car then is a type of cars and trucks. See how it comes up? Cars and trucks dot car, right? And if I do that, I can also do new cars and trucks dot car, right? Notice that how this works now, the syntax. And it's picking it up, right? It's picking up the syntax. It's understanding what I have to do here. If I hover over now, I get all kinds of information. And it's coming from the other module, right? But isn't this really long? Like cars and trucks, da 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 da. What if I wanted to make my car, this one here, I wanted to, instead of using the keyword let, I wanted to use the keyword import. I can do that like this. Import my car is equal to, right? And again, I could say something like cars and trucks dot car. So now what I'm doing is something totally different. I'm making an alias. Now what it says is an import declaration can only use in a namespace or module. And so I would normally be able to do it if it was a namespace or module. Here it's not. So this is where I can't do this. But I could, even in different spaces, I could make a friendly name. How about if I just use the let keyword? Let my car is equal to cars and trucks car. Well, no, it doesn't do that because I can't redeclare a block level scope. And I'm already declaring it down here, so I'm having a problem declaring it down there, right? But I could do something that looks like my car is equal to a new car. Let's see if I can do this. My car, what car? There we go. My car. I can say let's. And then I can say a let is of type car. Right? Well, I can't do car. I can't do the type, but I can do this. So this would be your short form. So here is your alias. So I can create an alias for cars and trucks. It's a really long name, right? Carsandtrucks.car, right? Instead of carsandtrucks.car, I can just call it car, right? And all I'm doing is creating an alias. I'm saying, so this, get a reference to all of this and just call it car. But the right way to do it, if you look at the fully qualified name, is all this. Why? Remember what you said earlier. Carsandtrucks.car, carsandtrucks.vehicle, carsandtrucks.truck, carsandtrucks.whatever I want. Okay, are we done? Hell no, right? We don't have a JS file. We have TS files. And TS files, my friends, are not compatible with browsers. We need to transpile. Well, we have the way we want to transpile, which is doing this. That's the way we want to transpile. We've told it how to transpile, but we actually haven't done it. There's two ways to do it. You can use the command line, right? I could use the command line and automatically transpile, right? So do something like TSC. That's the command line. Let's do it. So I can go here and go TSC, right? And then the name of the file that I want to transpile, which is inside of my scripts folder, right? And it's called app.ts, right? I can do that on the command line. If I press enter, right, it'll go through and then it'll transpile everything and it'll create app.js and with some errors, right? And let's take a look. This is the transpiled version. Exactly what we're normally used to seeing, plus down in here where we declare a car, right? Just to see that where this is. So just down here looks exactly like what we left it with, right? There's no difference. We haven't done a darn thing different than anything else, right? Here's my car right here. It's just compressed it. Line 83, my car is equal to my car. But it's having a problem because we haven't transpiled cars and trucks. So I could do that one too. I could say, go here and then transpile cars and trucks. So cars and trucks. This is individual transpiling, right? Go in there and transpile, and it transpiled everything. And notice what it did over here on the right side, on the left over here. It made cars and trucks, and it made app.ts. It followed my rules, right? It went to the compiler, which is this one right here, tsconfig.json, looked at these rules, and it compiled everything. The only thing it didn't do is source map because I didn't reference the compiler. But at the end of the day, transpiled. It created the JS files were automatically created for me, right? I don't have to type them out again. And if I look at my cars and trucks.js now, you can see that it includes all that ugly code. Right? All the stuff that we saw up online, all that ugly code, especially when it comes to inheriting and all that stuff, that's all in here now. I don't have to do any of that myself, which is a beautiful thing, right? Okay, does this run now? Let me see if it runs. I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to see if it runs in my code, right? So down in here, I'm going to run it. So I'm going to say light-server, and then hopefully this time it'll run, right? Hopefully. How come it's not working now? So if I got to look at it, inspect, what does it give me? It says uncaught reference error, car is not defined, right? Because I'm trying to, what I was trying to do is make an alias, and it failed. And app.js number 6, here over here, I say my car is equal to car. And what it didn't have is that other definition, even though, let me show you what I did here, just to tell you, to show you this, right? The reason why it failed is because, and this is why I did this, if I go to my app.ts and I do this, this has no bearing. It doesn't translate because carsandtrucks.car is a TypeScript construct. There is no translation on JavaScript, so it would fail. Even though it works here, it doesn't give me an error. It doesn't work. So if I was to really do this to fix this, let's get rid of this. Notice that doesn't understand car anymore because we're getting rid of it. And I'm going to use my long form again. My car, which is of type cars and trucks car, right? And this one is cars and trucks car. And I have to use the fully qualified name because this is the module name. This is the class name. This is the module name. This is the class name. And if I save that and go back and recompile my app.ts, wow, what a pain in the ass to do this. I'm sorry to say it that way, but I got to recompile. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I can't recompile every time. What if I change 10 files? It's a lot, right? I can say that. I can say TypeScript minus, TypeScript, and then /scripts /app.ts, and I can transpile that now. This, okay, app.ts not found. Let's try this out again. So it's, am I in the right place? Did I type it wrong? Scripts. Oh, sorry. TSC scripts /app.ts. And then it'll translate everything, right? It's having trouble finding that namespace, cars and trucks, from here, because I'm trying to transpile it in a vacuum. I'm not really connecting them at all. Okay. So we save this thing, and then if I go back, if I run it again, if I go light-server, and I run it, and I get my games list now. It's running again. Why? Because when I look at when I inspect it on the command line, my vehicle is driving, honk, honk, my car has 2 doors. All that stuff is working because what's happening is on the left, I've transpiled from TypeScript to JavaScript. This is the JavaScript version. From TypeScript, cars and trucks, to JavaScript. I've done that transpilation, right? You see the difference here, right? But I'm doing it one file at a time, which is really a pain. Shortcut, this is how you do it. So you do every file, every time you save. You have to do it one time, and you can also transpile in your Visual Studio Code. Hopefully everyone here is using Visual Studio Code or something like it. You can also do it with other text editors, but this is what you do. First, let's stop this. So Control-C. Inside Visual Studio Code, I want you to delete the JavaScript versions for a second. All right, so delete this one and delete my other JavaScript version. Now I have these older ones again, right? Okay, ready? I want you to press, if you're a Mac person, Command-Shift-B. If you're a PC person, Control-Shift-B, please. You're going to see this little taskbar come up in Visual Studio Code, right? Please follow me here because after this, you're going to have to try and do this on your own, right? Notice it says Configure Task Runner, right? In Task Runner, it shows me that there's 2 types. I can do this one, TypeScript, which is tsconfig.json, or in watch mode, which is what I want. This one, second one, TypeScript watch mode. Do you guys all see that? Click it, please. What you're going to get is the following piece of code that's going to be put in place inside your project. So in your project now, you have a new VS Code folder. It's an invisible folder in your project that includes a tasks.json file. It's another configuration file. In here, right, what I want you to see is the following. The version, the command, is it a shell command or not, arguments, and so on. One of the things that I want you to think about is this, -W, right? -W is the switch that makes it, puts it into watch mode. One more thing, and I realized what I did wrong here in my compiler options, right? Notice how this is how it should look right now, not an outer and an inner, but just an outer one like this. Notice how it actually fixed up my compiler, right? My compiler options got fixed. I put an extra curly brace down the outside of these things. Okay, cool. Now that I've done that, I got to press Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B again. So Command-Shift-B. And now it's going to do a little bit of a spinning dance. And if I look inside my scripts folder, I have the following. carsandtrucks.js, right? carsandtrucks.ts, carsandtrucks.js.map, which looks like this. app.js, app.ts, app.js.map, right? These map files are going to be used for debugging. That's why it's important to have them. I also, if I look down here, there's a few errors I got here, right? Here's one. Property distance does not exist on type X and Y, right? Why is it giving me these errors here? Even though it'll compile. It'll compile anyway. Even if there's errors, TypeScript will compile, right? It just may not work, right? Let me show you what this is saying. So if I go into my app.ts file and I look for that class, right, my point class that I made, it's complaining. And it's complaining because my point class doesn't understand anything about this X and Y. It doesn't understand what X and Y is because we haven't defined X and Y. Remember, TypeScript is a little bit stricter, right? So in order for me to fix my point class with TypeScript, I need to define X and Y. So inside my class, I need to say that, well, X is equal to a number, right? And I need to use the var keyword, or let, right? And I also have to say that let y is equal to a number. But the problem that I'm having here is this is the old way of doing classes, yeah? Using a function within a function and blah, blah, blah. How do I convert this to pure TypeScript so it looks nicer? How do I convert it? So I don't want to use my old class definition style. I want to use my new class definition style. Well, it'll look like this. I take this away. I'll leave the curly brace in here. Please leave the curly brace in here. And I'll call it class point. And I can take away this stuff. Right? This is I'm just converting for you so you can see what it looks like, our point class now. Right? And instead of function point, it's just constructor. Right? Now that looks more of a new style of doing things, right? And instead of prototype.normalize, we don't have to do it this way. We can just call normalize. And instead of a function, we can just make it into a method. See, lots less typing, right? Here's our point class, 0, but we want to make 0 a static member, right? And what we have to do with 0, we can actually use access modifiers. We can say something like this, public static. We can use those two things in front. Or I can't define x and y. I can't define x and y as this dot x and this dot y. But we can do something like, we can make it static. Or we can also make it public. Let's just leave it as is. Make it like this for now, please. 0. So that's our point class. Point class is like this. We define an x and y, 2 numbers. Our constructor takes in 2 numbers. We can even go further than that and define them as numbers. Again, the more we put in here, the more data we feed to TypeScript, the more, I want you to hear this word, type safe our code is, right? Because it's checking for you. It's doing type checking. Is this type the same as Tom declared? Is it the same? Yes, go ahead, no errors. If it's not the same, oh, something's wrong. Pull up an error. Show Tom there's a problem. You know? Also, we can also decide what does this method return. This method doesn't return anything, so we say it returns void. So we can put colon after the method and then void. This means it returns nothing. There's not a return statement in here, inside the method. Remember, a method is just a function that's inside of a class. All right? Or a closure. Void. Okay, here's something. My distance class. I want to make my distance class static, public static, right? So this is where I want to make public static. I can do that here. I can say public static, and I can get rid of all this. And this way, not only can I do this, right? Now, I don't need any of this stuff, by the way. All I need here is a semicolon. I mean, I wish I call it a bracket. So I'm going to get rid of all this. And just go to one of these, a curly brace. And I'll give you my update in a second. So public static, instead of P1 and P2, I just don't want these parameters to be passed in. I want them to be points. Here's my point class. I can make them as points. I can define them as points. Now we're going to get type safety. It's not going to allow you just to put anything in there. It'll say specifically that only points, P1 and P2, right, you can calculate the distance on 2 points. Make sense? If you wanted to make normalize and zero also public static members, you'd have to pass information into them. For now, we won't. Because here's my new class. My new class is called point, my point class. Let's save it. When I save it, just watch down here on the left, on the bottom left of my IDE, right? I save it. There's a bit of a little funky thing that happens, like a little symbol that comes up. It's actually just your backslash, / and the, kind of a dash that comes up that looks like it's rotating, something that's rotating. So if I save it again, it'll try and rotate. Watch every time I save it. Watch again. Over here where my mouse pointer is. Watch. Right? Every time I do that, it checks to see if anything's saved, and it transpiles. So now it's taken this class and turned it into the older version, which looks like, if I go down, right, which looks like this, the old version. We can put it back, right? This is the correct old version of the class. So it's compatible 100%. Everything's the exact same. All the types have been stripped away from it because in regular JavaScript, there are no types. It's dynamic typing. Well, there are types, but we don't declare them, right? We still got one error left. On the left, notice there's an X, and there's a little symbol here that's a 1. There's one warning and one error. Let's see what the error is. It says property games does not exist on type object. That's what that is, property games. Okay. How do we fix that? And if I can hop there. If I click onto it, I hop right there. Okay. How do I fix this problem? Data.games for each. Data.games for each. What I really want to do here is I want to create a for each loop. That's what I'm trying to do here. And I'm using data.games, right, to get there, right? Well, where am I getting games from? Where is data coming from? And if I actually look at data and I right-click, I can do something called go to definition. If I do that, it'll just drop me right in there, data, right? It'll actually send me right there. Data is just an object. That's what it says. I don't know what data is. Data is just some object. How do I know that games is part of data, right? Well, I'm reading games into data, right? Here's why it's giving me an error. It doesn't understand what this is. It says, hey, where are you getting this games from anyway, Tom? Where am I getting this from? Where am I getting games from? From the JSON file, remember? I'm reading in my games file, my games from the data file, right? And I'm saying data.games.forEach. That's what I'm saying right here, right? Because I'm parsing my data. So if I look at my games.json, here's my games.json. Here's my games array. Here's my array, okay? And my games array, I'm getting this games array from my JSON file right here, okay? But TypeScript doesn't understand what I'm doing. It says, I don't know where you're getting that from, right? Where am I reading the data from? Well, I'm reading it from right here. And notice because it doesn't understand what I'm doing, JSON.parse. It says you're parsing some text and you're turning it into data. That's what we're doing here when we read from the file, right? Here's my data. But data doesn't have any form at all, right? It doesn't have any kind of form when I'm reading it in. And so it doesn't understand what it is. Will this still work? Yes, it will. And sometimes when you look at something like this with TypeScript, there's ways of fixing this, but it's kind of an advanced thing we have to do, right? So what I'd like you to do for now, like for example, how could I fix this problem? I could define data, right? I could define my data as an object that contains an array. Like, this is the problem, right? It contains an array. And inside the array, if you look at JSON, my games.json, inside my array, my object has games, and it's an array that has name, cost, and rating. What is this? These are properties. It's an array of objects. I could define an object that has name, cost, and rating, which is a game. A game, right? That's what this is. So just to finish off this example to make you even more crazier, right? I'm going to go into my, and bear with me while I do this, okay? I'm going to make a new module, okay? A new module. It's not going to be cars and trucks anymore, okay? It's not going to be cars and trucks. I'm going to call this the data module. And the data module can read games and books and everything else I have on the JSON, on my JSON files, right? And I'm going to save this inside, right? Instead of in my library, I'm going to save it here inside my scripts. But this is getting fairly messy, yeah? Take a look how messy this is, really messy. I got my app.js, and I got my cars and trucks module, and I got a bunch of other stuff I want to add in here. So we might have to think about something else to go along with this. For now, I'm going to right-click on my scripts folder. I'm going to do a new file that I'm going to call games.ts. Right? Now, should it be called games.ts, or should it be called, I'm just putting it out there for you, should it be called something else, right? Should it be called, instead of games, I mean, I don't have to use module syntax if I don't want to. Should I call it what it's supposed to be, data, a data.js? And I can include all my different kinds of classes of data in there, right? I got to be careful. So I want to just call it games for now. Can I export one thing? Can I do this with games? Can I say export my class? Can I do this? The problem with this is it says class declaration without the default modifier must have a name, right? So default, what it allows me to do here, export default, my class, and my class that's going to be there is called game, capital G. Remember using the old ECMAScript 6 syntax. I can do that because TypeScript supports it. Okay, cool, cool. I like this. This is nice. Now it has a few properties, right? So if I go back to my games.json, games.json has name, cost, and rating. Those are the properties. Name would be a string, cost is a number, and so is rating right now. Name, cost, and rating. Okay, cool. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to say name, string, cost, number, rating, number. Okay. Save. What does this do? It automatically transpiled into games.js because I'm watching. I've already got my watcher going. You should have it too. Notice what it did. Bam, it made this for me. Oh man, what the heck? Where's my stuff, my data, right? Well, remember, there's no types. Until I use it, there's nothing. This is going to be, might be a problem, right? Notice that it says automatically detected as an ECMAScript module, right? Let's see how it actually works for us. Okay, cool. So I've got this. Doesn't really do anything. It's just this, right? And what I want to do is, of course, include this inside of my index.html and every other file. So here's my index.html. In order for me to use it, I need to include it. So I'm going to take this part here, copy it, and put it in there, and then call this games.js. Games.js. Right? And I'm going to do the same thing, games.js, to my projects. And I want to do the same thing to my contacts. Notice I have to include it on all pages that I use my stuff. Right? So that's my second step. First step, separate a file into another module, call it something, use the export keyword. Right? Next step, define it here in the file. Third step, in the file that's using it, I either use an import or I use it as a definition. So how do I do that? So in my app.ts, my data isn't just data anymore. Can I say that my data is actually an array or an object? So I'm going to put it out there, right? It's an object that includes an array, right? An array of game objects, so games. So a games array. Can I do that? So an example of if I start typing it in, if I start going, you know, game, it doesn't really compute, right? Even though games is over here, right? Here's my games, my game class. I haven't really declared it anywhere in my app.js. So let me just undo that change for a second. Again, this is advanced stuff, so don't worry if you don't remember everything. If I said that let's game, which is of type game, right? Well, I can't do that because I'm not importing, and I can't use the import keyword either. I can't use import, you know, import game like I showed you. I can't do this, right, as game, right, from, I can't do this because it's going to stop me. Notice it's already stopping me from games.ts. It won't do that. It won't do that because, man, an import declaration can only be used as a namespace or a module, right? I could try using the reference syntax, / reference path, where I can say where the reference path is / and then it's games.ts. I could do this. That would accept that, right? But then when I start using the class, if I say something like, again, let, you know, game, make it a type of game, it doesn't work, right? It has no basis for how to do that because I haven't wrapped it in a module. Let me go back to show you what I'm talking about. I'd like to just export this, but I can't just export this. This is just a class that has no module attached to it. Okay. The right thing to do if you want to be successful. Module. And we're going to call this name something that makes sense. Like maybe we're going to call this data, like I said. So here's my data module. My data module is going to have this class inside of it. And we're not going to export default. We're just going to export. Okay. Save. And also, this is nice. Remember what it translated into? Nothing. So this doesn't make any sense. Because when we transpile, it transpiles to this, which doesn't mean anything for us. In order for us to use those things, we need to define them. And the way to define them in game.ts is to use a constructor. Right? We can use the empty constructor if we like. But we must use a constructor. And by default, we need to set up some default values. For example, this dot name, right, we'll make it equal to the empty string. And this dot cost will be equal to 0. And this dot rating will be equal to 0. That's the default stuff, right, that we got here. Module data, this game, we got all this stuff here. All right, so we have a couple of separations to make it nicer. One is these are our instance variables. And down here is the constructor. Notice that I'm using an empty constructor. Oops, empty constructor. Different than the other one. The other one took values in here, right? But here I'm not taking any values, and I'm setting up some defaults. So this is the empty constructor. Yay, cool. When I transpile, I get this. Now, isn't that different? I get values, right? And I get default values. And I'm also using the data keyword as the module space. Okay, going back to app.ts now. When I try doing the same thing with game, let game is equal to data, right? Not data, this data, right? But I want to access my module data. How come, I'm just putting it out there for you, how come when I do this and I get my reference path games, and if I start typing data again, how come I'm having a problem? Because this is called data. Can I do data.game? I can, right? Because it actually understands what I'm trying to do now, data.game. Okay, too. So game is equal to data.game, right? And if I want to make a game array, right? If I define it in here, right, what a game array would look like, right? I would do something like this. I would say, well, it's an object that has a array that's called game, right? Whatever the game is called, and then the array, here's my array syntax, is of type data.game, right? I can do that. And in fact, if I really want to do it properly, this doesn't work exactly right. My game is a type of array, right? Just a second. Couldn't I do a data game array? That's the syntax. So I could say of type game. The game is in there, this game. So if I hover over data now, it's a data that has a game array, right? One member. Does it take away my error? No, because I'm looking for games, right? And what I really want to say is game, which is games, which is of type game. Now, how about that? Does it take away that issue? And by the way, does it still load everything that it loads, right? We did like this big loop to define everything. So here I'm defining a variable called game, which is of type data.game. And I'm saying that data itself, the local variable data, right, is an object that includes another object called games, and it's of type data.game, which is, that's why I told you to forgive me. I told you to forgive me, right? It's this. Does it still work? That's the question I have to ask you. So save, and I'm going to save all for a second, save all. And if I go back to my browser, and let me just refresh this browser by running it again. So light-server, does it work? That's the question. We did all that work. It worked. And you can see that it does, right? Otherwise it wouldn't load anything. And if I look at the inspect, if I inspect the console, if I go to my console now, I don't have any errors at all. If I go back to my code, I also don't have any errors on the bottom. See, there's no errors on the bottom anymore, right here. I have a warning. My warning is invalid relative link. Where is that? It's here. Invalid relative link. Games.js. Right? Games.js. Here it is, scripts. I'm going to leave it as is, though. I'm not going to touch just a warning. It says no hard tabs, column 1. Like it does all this too. It's going to take me something else. And we're going to leave that alone. That's a whole other issue. It's trying to define what to look at. And I'm not going to look at that readme.md file. Questions around this stuff. I know this is troublesome when we first look at it. Okay? But what I'm really doing here in my games.ts file, right? And this is why it's not named properly. I'm making a module. I'm surrounding it with a module called data. You could have called it anything you want, right? I could have called it my data objects, right? Or I could have called it my tables or my collections, whatever you want to call them, right? My module collections. How about if I wanted to change it? Could I change it now? Could I make it from data? Could I change this to collections? Because game is a collection of data. That's what it is. It's a collection of data that has name, cost, and rating around it. I could change it to collections. But here's the right syntax for this, okay? If you're going to change your names. 1, you need to put your modules inside their own folder, okay? In their own folder. That's the proper method, the best practices, if you will. Just like we have our lib folder, we're going to make another folder under scripts called collections. Let's do that together. So right-click, new folder, and we're going to call it collections. Inside of our collections, we're going to drag and drop we're going to drag and drop our games.ts file. Only the games.ts file. The rest of them can stay out here, but the games.ts file's got to move into collections. Okay? It's going to recompile it for you, by the way. And then I can get rid of my games.js. I can get rid of this, delete. And I can get rid of my games.js.map on the outside, delete. So now I have something like this. I have my collections. Inside there I have games.js and games.js.map and games.ts. Okay, cool. Now, inside my games.ts, I want to not use data, but I want to use the word collections. If it's inside the collections folder, that's going to be my module container, collections. Wow, that's a big change. Now it's going to transpile, and when it does, it's going to look like this. Right? Nice and beautiful. Right? Well, I have a problem now. My problem is, first of all, there's a couple problems. One, in my index.html, it's not pointing to the right place anymore. It's not in scripts games.js. It's in scripts collections, right? Games.js. I'm going to copy this whole thing. I'm going to copy that into the contact.html, as well as projects.html. All right. That's one thing. Number two. Inside my app.ts, I got problems now. There is no data.game. It's collections.game. Right? That's what it stands for now. Collections.game. And this reference path is also incorrect. It's not this. It's, again, notice that I have to go up one to collections and then game.ts. I don't really need this, but I'm putting it there so you can see what I can do with the reference path. And now if I save, I've got a couple warnings. An invalid relative link, right? And another invalid relative link, which has nothing to do with me. It's in my readme.md file. Hey, I'm picking up stuff in my readme.md file, but this has nothing to do with me. How come I'm trying to, it's trying to figure stuff out for readme.md in both files, right? One's in my scripts.lib jQuery file, and the other one is in my MD files inside my jQuery file, my scripts.lib inside lesson 9. So that's wrong. You know, in fact, I don't want to include anything that's in my lib folder to try and transpile anything in my lib folder. I don't want them to look there at all. And I can change that by going into my tsconfig.json. And underneath where it says compile options, I can open up another comma, right? And what I want to do is, okay, I want to, actually it's like this. I want to exclude, right, files that look like this. So one file I want to definitely exclude is scripts lib. I want to exclude that, and I need to put this in quotation. That's why it's turning out red. Scripts lib. I don't want to look inside scripts lib at all when I transpile. Because if I transpile in scripts lib, that's trying to transpile everything in my lib folder, which I don't want. That's not my stuff. That's somebody else's stuff. Right? So I definitely don't want to look in there. So scripts lib's got to be excluded. By the way, if you really want to be sure, you can also try this syntax, .scripts.lib. Right? But at the end of the day, scripts.lib, because it's in the same folder, is fine. And I also don't want to look at node modules. Anything to do with node modules, right? So scripts.lib is one. And if there was a node modules in here, I definitely don't want to exclude. I want to exclude that. So node underscore modules, definitely want to exclude that. Right? So I don't want to look in those places. Otherwise, they'll look everywhere when I transpile. So node modules, please. And I don't want to transpile anything that has an MD on it. I don't want you to look at MD files, only JS files. So what can I do there? I can say, hey, don't transpile anything that has a star.md. I don't want to look at those either. Look at star.md. So no, markdown files. Okay. So this is my compiler options. This is how I configure TypeScript. If I Command Shift B again, I can automatically set up a task runner if I want to, but it's automatically going, so I'm good to go. All right, so I set up my collections. Here's my collections. In my scripts, I have a collections folder, and I have my app.js and my cars and trucks. Cars and trucks are like objects that I'm using, right? It's almost like there's some business objects that I'm using, right? So cars and trucks, it's neat, but it's a really big long name, right? Number one. And it doesn't make any sense. I don't just want my cars and trucks module, right? I want it to be called something else. In fact, I never want to do this if I can avoid it. Take a look. See what I've done in here? I've got a car that's a vehicle. I got another one that's a car. And I want to have another one. I might have other ones that's a truck. What do I want to make this? I don't want to make this cars and trucks. I want to make this a series of objects, right? And in fact, they're all vehicles. Vehicle is also a vehicle, right? But car is a vehicle. Because car extends vehicle, I should make some kind of objects library that I kind of extend everything else. And the way to do that is, just like I did with collections, I can make another folder, right, called objects. Right, so here's my objects folder. By the way, I'm just making this up so I can show you how to split across different files and different folders. That's my real underlying motive for all this. Right, it's the last one we'll do. I promise. Then I'll put it up on GitHub for you so you have it all. Right. So here's my objects. I want to take my cars and trucks and put it in there, but I don't want to call it cars and trucks. I want to delete this stuff. Right. In my objects, I want to make two files. I want to make a file that says, car. So car.ts, right? And I want to make another file, new file called vehicle.ts. There's car and there's vehicle. Notice it automatically transpiles everything. Okay, let me start with the vehicle one. My vehicle is inside of a module called, what would the module name be called? Objects. That's my new way of doing things, right? Objects. Inside my objects module, well, we already have it. It's inside my cars and trucks.ts. I'm just going to go there for a second. I want to grab everything that's in here, not including my car, right? So I'm going to grab my class for my vehicle and cut it, right? I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to go back into my vehicle.ts file, and I want to paste it. Now take a look. It's just one little class that I got hanging out here. It's nice and easy. It's only 20 lines of code. It's small. I don't have to look hard, right? Okay, here's my vehicle class. I want to do the same thing for my car class. So my car class, I'm going to make a module, right? That's the same module, objects. And inside my objects module, I'm going to take my car class. I'm going to go to my car.ts class, which is inside my cars and trucks. There it is. I'm going to take this whole thing here, and I'm going to cut it, right? And I'm going to go back to car, and inside here, I'm going to paste it and save. Now here's something. Notice how it automatically finds vehicle. Because I'm using the same module, objects, and in vehicle, it's also objects. It combines. It adds one module and the other together and says, hey, you know what? Both cars and vehicles are part of the same module or namespace. And if it's true, then I can access it without doing something like objects.vehicle. It understands that. Okay, cool. Now cars and trucks is pretty empty. And you know what I want to do to it? I want to kill it. I want to kill cars and trucks. So delete. And I want to get rid of my cars and trucks.js file. Delete it. And be careful when you do this, by the way. You might delete the wrong thing. And I want to delete this one. But am I okay now? Am I good with cars and my car and vehicle? Hell no. I'm not good at all. I got to fix myself up because guess what? On my index.html, it's looking for cars and trucks, and that doesn't exist anymore, right? I got to, rather, it should be like this. objects, and then car.js, right? Notice what it says right here. Here's my content, here's my objects, and here's my car.js. Car is capital C car. That's important. That's why I called it for whatever reason, right? And I might as well also bring in vehicle. And vehicle should be actually in before car. Doesn't really matter, but you probably want to put vehicle before car. Why is that important? Because car is based on vehicle. Car needs to know about vehicle. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. So I'm going to copy these 2 lines of code, 47 and 48 here, and put them in my other HTML files, right? So I'm going to go back to contact.html and replace my cars and trucks with those 2, save. I'm going to go into my projects, and I'm going to replace cars and trucks with those 2, save, right? So this is what it should look like now. Now you might say, wow, you really complicated everything. Well, not really. What I did was I compartmentalized, right? So I have 2 different folders now, collections and objects. There's also my lib folder where I have some other people's libraries, right? And then I have my app.js and app.ts, which is out here. By the way, I could also put that in a folder, and I can call it core if I want to, my core app. But for now, let's leave it alone. That'll be for you to do if you want to. Okay, if I want to go in here, is this okay? So collections game, that's okay. But I got a couple errors. And if you notice on the left-hand side, if I click on the errors, there is a namespace, cars and trucks has no exported car member. And I'm trying to do this. And that doesn't work anymore, right? Cars and trucks doesn't exist. Car is actually an object. It's from in the objects library. So I'm going to say objects car. That's a little bit shorter too. Objects car. And also my reference path's all wrong, right? Because I actually put a reference path up here, cars and trucks. There is no car and trucks, cars and trucks.ts. However, there is a ... / and then it's got to be up to, by the way, this is for compatibility issues. I'm using this. You don't need this anymore. But I'm going up to objects and then car, right, .ts. And I also want to include another object called vehicle. And those 2 things, that's the reference path for them. You know what? I could put all my reference paths together because I have another one down here at the top of all my files. And that's what I like to do. I don't like to put my reference paths in different places if I'm going to use them at all. So if I scroll down to where I'm loading my stuff, like inside my app.ts, right, here's my app.ts, and I got my point class, and I got all this other stuff here, right? But up where I kind of get my data, so there's my function. But down when I get my data somewhere, right? My point data. And when I'm reading stuff, here's my game right here. This reference path right here, I can put that to the top too. So cut this and go all the way to the top. And I like to put my reference paths kind of together like this. Right? Okay, question for you. Do you understand what I've done? Let's review very quickly. So first of all, let me refresh. So this still works, which is a good thing. I still see this. And when I look at my console, right, I don't see any errors in my console. I just see data that I've asked for, right? And the other thing is that inside my files, I only see a couple of warnings in there because they're still looking in the MD file. But for the most part, everything is clean. The only thing I don't like is the fact that I got my point class that's sitting inside my app.js file, which makes no sense. My point class should be in its own file, like everything else. Okay, one more. Just to show you the example one more time. First step is, come on guys and girls, what do? I'm gonna ask you guys now. What's the first thing I'm gonna do? I wanna separate my point class into its own file. First step, first thing I do? Where do I put it is the question, right? Where would you put it? I could make a new file, but where should I put it? It's definitely not a collection. Is it an object? Probably. I could probably make it an object. It's some kind of object I want to use, right? Not making this generic objects folder, but in the future it might be called something else, right? So yeah, it could be in the objects folder. So if I'm going to do that, I want to definitely make a file, like you said. So right click, new file. And inside my new file, I'm going to call it point.ts. Cool. Once I've made my point.ts, if I'm watching JavaScript or TypeScript transpiles everything into JavaScript because I'm running a task runner that watches my files. Remember that Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B. It runs a task automatically for me. And every time you launch Visual Studio Code, you'll have to do that command again if you want to transpile something. Okay? Cool. So this is my point.ts, but my point.ts is empty. All right? I don't want to leave it empty. I want to take the stuff that's inside my app.ts and I want to populate it. So I'm going to grab all this stuff. Forget older system of code anymore. I want to grab all this, my point class. Whoa. My point class. I want to grab all of it, the entire definition of my point class, which is up to here. I want to cut it. Right, there's my point. Now it's giving me errors because it doesn't know what point is yet. It will. And then I'm going to go into my point class itself, and I want to go do module before I paste it, module objects. And inside my module objects, paste it. I don't need the semicolon. And if I want to make everything look nice, I want to kind of select everything and then format selection. So it looks nice. So this is my point class. Now, can I see it? No, because I need to export it. I can't see it unless I export it. Remember, if I don't export it, it sits inside of my module and it's locked in there forever. Right? My export keyword allows me to expose members that are inside of my module. If I don't expose them, they're private members that only live and die inside that module namespace. Right? If I use the export keyword, now I can use them outside of the module. So number one, I do this, right? Don't worry, guys and girls. I will review this again next week when we come back. Okay, it won't be the last time you see it. Okay, cool. So I've done this. That's maybe part 2. Part 3, I should probably attach it to my index.html and everything else. They have to be there, right? So I'm going to use it. It's going to be here. So I'm going to kind of copy one of these lines here. And the order doesn't really matter that much as long as you attach it. So it's scripts, objects, point. Right? I'm going to take this whole thing. I'm going to put it inside my project. It's going to be in every file the same way, right? And inside my contacts. Okay, so I've got all these different things here. So now it's all attached. Remember that these index.html files and all the HTML files they're all like manifests. They all kind of tie all my JavaScript files together, right? Okay, cool. Now, inside my app.ts, I got to make changes, right? Yeah, I have my point class as an object. That's cool. But my app.ts doesn't know anything about it. The top of my screen, I should make a reference path for backwards compatibility for now. This is for old TypeScript versions, right? So it's not going to be a collection. It's going to be an object. And it's going to be in here on the top. It's got to be the point.ts. That's a point.ts. And furthermore, when I come down here, wherever I have my errors, if I click on the errors on the left, you can see that it says cannot find point. Of course you can't find point because point isn't defined this way. Notice it says let point is equal to a new point. Well, it really should be something like this. Objects.point. That's what the type is. Right? I'm going to kind of copy those. And then point should be objects.point. Objects.point. TypeScript is beautiful for this code hinting stuff. And this one can't work like this. You need to call it with objects.point, even though it's a static method. And now I've reduced my code even more. Notice how I keep on reducing and reducing and reducing, right? I've actually added code here, but just to show you how this all works. Okay, cool. Let's take a look. Does it all still work? So save everything. If I really want to be careful, I can save all. Right? And if I go back, I can still see everything. Yeah? Here's all my list. And if I look at it, if I inspect it in the console, I shouldn't get any errors. No errors here. And also, there should not be any errors down here inside my Visual Studio Code. Should not show any errors down here. If it does, you missed something. Here it is, down here. I do see a warning, but I don't care about that. It's just a warning. So you can see now that my application that I'm writing, right? This, by the way, guys, we're just still scratching the surface. I'm really not, this is a toy application we're writing. There's nothing, right? So don't get me wrong. When I say this stuff, I'm just setting it up with you guys so you see it. Why am I showing you TypeScript? Because it makes JavaScript easier, right? Especially when it comes to object-oriented JavaScript. I want you to know the old stuff, but we're going to see the new stuff more and more. I want you to understand ECMAScript 6, and I want you to be able to use TypeScript to transpile from TypeScript, the new standard, to JavaScript, ECMAScript 5 or earlier, the old standard, okay? So that it's cross-compatible across all browsers, okay? All right, we're almost done. So this is pretty cool. Like, you know, we've done a lot of work here. And the one thing to note is all the files we've changed. If you look at here on GitHub, you can see our local Git. You can see that these are all the files we've changed. These are all the updates we've made and the modifications. And the message is going to be, we'll say, added TypeScript to project. That's what we did here. We made a lot of other things. I could have had many, many commits here, but I've only just added one. And I can push this. And now you have all my code. All my code. And if you look up online, right, so if I go back onto my GitHub repository and refresh, you can see now that I have several folders. If I go to my scripts folder, so for test purposes, if we get together for an exam, you have access to all this stuff, right? Remember, in order for you to kick off TypeScript as final words, you need a tsconfig.json file. You need this. This gives you the configuration for your compiler, how you transpile from one language to another. You need this, right? You need to download and install TypeScript on the command line, which we've all done today, right? And then I recommend, you don't need to do it this way, but I recommend setting up folders that have to do with the names of the objects that you're creating, right? For example, my games collection, right? My different objects, car, point, vehicle, whatever you're going to use, right? Set up folders like that. And then each of the folders is going to be the name of the module or namespace. And by the way, module and namespace for TypeScript are interchangeable. They're interchangeable. You can use one or the other. It doesn't matter, right? Same thing, right? And my other thing that I want you to remind you is that TypeScript is a typed language, right? And all the information around TypeScript is right here on TypeScriptlang.org. It talks about basic types. It's a really good read, and I want you to take a look at it. For homework, please take a look at the TypeScriptlang.org website. Read some of these basic types. I will test you on them for the final exam. You will have to use this stuff, right? This isn't going away, right? So you need to understand this stuff. It's right here. Why am I teaching you TypeScript? Because when you get into client-side, server-side scripting, when you use Angular 2 with TypeScript, or Angular 2 with Ionic, or Angular 2 with anything else, you're going to need to know TypeScript. And if you don't know TypeScript, it's going to hit you in the, you know where, later on. And I don't want that to happen. I want you to know it in advance. I also want you to know the new features of ECMAScript 6, so you're not surprised either. Any questions around this stuff before we end for the day? Remember, that's all recorded online. You can always go back and look at this again. But otherwise, next week, be prepared. There will be another assignment coming up soon, right? Then the other assignment that I'm going to do, I'm going to be building some kind of ad, and we're going to use another library that we're going to use TypeScript to build this whole other library of stuff we're going to use. And we're going to start doing that next week. All right, so stay tuned. All right, that's it for me today. See you guys next week.